Camera's live.
Good morning, fellow directors. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge our gathering virtually throughout the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people and welcome you to today's agenda. We apologize for the technical glitch in getting going. As Chair Stone had said, it may be a 2020 hangover that has been prolonged. With your indulgence, before we approve the agenda, I've had a request from Director Nicholson to delay R1 until her return. She had some input on a couple of those, so if you're okay with that, delaying till her return. I see nodding of heads. So Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item of business is the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Legault.
And for public input period, I have not received any submissions for this meeting. There's no delegations, correspondence, or information, so it would be on to reports. And as we are delaying R1 for Director Nicholson, we can move on to R2, which is a report from the Finance Division, 2021 electoral area supplemental requests referred from December 2nd. The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the supplemental request for function 238 Community Parks Area H for Gully Trail Bridge be approved, and 2, that the supplemental request for function 238 Community Parks Area H Hiking and Equestrian Bridge West Trail be approved.
Okay, anyone from staff going to start with this, or are we going right to the directors? I think I saw Director Martman, your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just would like to defer this to the special corporate meeting on January 25. The Parks Advisory Commission for Area H is just getting up and running next week. So I'd like to have this in front of them before we make a decision.
I'll second that.
Move to refer and seconded. Any further discussion on the referral? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? So that will be referred to January 25th, Mr. Martin. Next, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. R3, report from Facilities and Transit Division regarding the 2021 draft budget for Function 106, Commuter Transit. This was referred from the December 9th Special Corporate Services meeting, and the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the 2021 draft budget as amended for Function 106, Commuter Transit, be approved.
Director Stone, moving that?
I was moving, yep.
And do I have a seconder? Seconded. Director Marsh. Mr. Wakeham, would you like to speak to this?
I can give an update, Mr. Chair, as it is an update from the December meeting. This one is much more positive in that we now have the BC Restart contribution funding for both Function 106 and the next one is 107. Just for the committee's understanding, the commuter Function 106 BC Restart contribution is $606,000 over 2 years, which is $303 per year. That amount is retro to April 1 of 2020, and it is also shared with the Capital Regional District for the directors who are unaware that this service is, we have a partner with the Capital Regional District. As the report mentions, the BC Restart funding comes with 3 conditions, though, that the existing service levels be maintained, that the current fares also be maintained, and any fare increases that are considered are to be limited to an average of 2.3% for the next 4 years. And the third condition is that the annual operating agreement with BC Transit must be approved and signed by January 31 of 2021. There's a separate report going to the 3 p.m. Community Services meeting later this afternoon to deal with that. So with the first 2 conditions, the options that we provided back on December the 9th to the report, they're really not valid. We can't reduce the service, and the fare increases of 2.3% is only 5 cents on a $2.25 cash fare. But the good news is for at least 2021, we no longer need to consider reducing services to get the tax requisition level to be 0 from the 2020 amount. So there's 3 amendments that are already made to the draft 2021 Function 106 budget that have been incorporated into the 2 documents or the attachments, which is the report by cost center as well as the 5-year plan. And the 3 amendments are the inclusion of the CVRD share of the BC Restart funding contribution of $167,109 and the deferral of the approved new transit assistant position to September of 2021, which saves $17,333. And thirdly, the increase to the BC Transit contract service expense by $8,451. Those 3 items end up netting a net savings of the $175,000, which would mean there's no tax increase for the 2021 year. That's really the quick summary of what the staff report is, and I'm open to any questions that directors may have.
Okay, do I see any hands, directors? Director Marsh.
Yeah, I don't actually have a question, but it is a big relief for 2021 because I think it would have been, hopefully we would have still gone ahead, but it would have been tough, I know, for some people. So thank you, Mr. Wakeham, and thank you to, was it the province or the feds who gave the restart money?
It's both. It was a partnership with the feds and the province.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any further, directors? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R4 is report from Facilities and Transit Division on the 2021 draft budget for Function 107 Conventional and Custom Transit Services. And the proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the 2021 draft budget is amended for Function 107 Conventional and Custom Transit Services be approved.
Do I have a mover for that one? Moved and seconded. Mr. Wakeham, would you like to broach this one as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sure, it's a very similar situation. When we presented the preliminary budget back in December, it was very bleak with sitting at a large tax increase of about $261,000. But that was prior to any knowledge of what the BC Restart funding contribution would be. We now know what that amount is, and that amount for Function 107 is very similar as 106. It's $604,000 over 2 years, again, retro back to April 1 of 2020. So the 2020 year should also end up being much better than first expected. But with regard to 2021 budget, which is what we're talking about, Function 107 had 8 amendments made to the preliminary budget. And again, those have already been incorporated so that they were done about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, so the board could get an understanding that transit we knew was going to be down to 0 and that you would get a better update when you were looking at other budgets and making decisions. So the 8 amendments, there's really in 2 parts to this. The first 4 items that are noted in the report, these just reflect current trends on revenues, and so and things like the deferring of the custom Sunday service, which was already approved. So those 4 items reduce the tax by $40,500. The balance, which are new items, the new amendments are, again, the inclusion of the CVRD share of the BC Restart funding amount of $302,000. The deferral of the approved new transit assistant position to September, which saves $36,000 because this position is cost shared between the 2 transit functions. And thirdly, to increase the BC Transit contract services by $60,000. And the last item is to include $58,000, or specifically $57,586 to transfer to the operating reserve. And the reason being to bring the balance closer to the minimum policy requirement. We're just under that, and so this would help us bring it very close. The total of the first 4 items, as well as the 4 new items that have all been incorporated already in the attachments, brings the total net savings down exactly what we needed, $260,914. Therefore, in summary, having no tax increase from 2020. Again, open to any questions that directors may have.
Looking at my virtual panel, do I see any hands, questions, comments? First of all, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Wakeham, for the hard work in getting where we are today. It did not look very promising a couple of weeks ago, but kudos and implementing those changes. Thank you. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Ms. Legault, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to R5, report from the Finance Division on 2021 budget regional supplemental requests. And the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the supplemental requests for the following functions be approved. Function 100, General Government Regional Recreation Referendum Analysis. 2, Economic Development Regional Connectivity Strategy. 3, Function 280, Regional Parks, Couch and Valley Trail Replacement of Major Culverts. 4, Function 280, Regional Parks Regional Active Transportation Plan. 5, Function 280, Regional Parks Vehicle Replacement. 6, Function 285, Regional Parkland Acquisition Master Plan Review. 7, 520, Solid Waste Management Complex Transfer Station Scale Replacement. And 8, Function 520, Solid Waste Management Complex Peerless Road Skid Steer Replacement.
Thank you very much. Your pleasure on these. Would you like to deal with these one at a time? Director Kuhn? Oh, actually, I had Director Wilson first and then Director Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to deal with number 6 on its own, please. I have some comments on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Kuhn.
Ditto.
And Director Sebring.
I would move items 1 through 8 with the exception of number 6, just to get those off the table.
And I have a seconder. Any further comments on that? Director Smith.
Yes, would it be possible to pull the number, just a minute, the regional active transportation plan out of there, which is, I believe, number 4?
Absolutely, if you wish, we can do that as well. And I think I saw Director Salmon as well.
Yeah, could we pull number 1, 2, please?
So I have 1, 4, and 6 for discussion. Any further? So Director Sebring, that motion would include those except for 6, 4, and 1?
Yeah, I consider that a friendly amendment. I didn't realize other people wanted to pull. I jumped the gun. So yeah, all the items except 1, 4, and 6 moved and seconded. Thank you.
Seconder's okay with that. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Sounds good. Now we'll move to number 1 for discussion. Director Salmon.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. So some of this is for the referendum and some of it's for the usage monitoring. Is that correct? Mr.
I see Miss Soldera nodding.
Okay. Okay.
Anything further?
And then it's all from reserve. Is that right? None from acquisition?
Yes, Miss Soldera.
So just if I may, just so you don't have to just look at me nodding, absolutely. So this is a combination of the 2 initiatives, and it will all be coming from operating reserve under the general government function, which the regional recreation initiative has been funded from thus far.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine.
Okay. I have Director Stone and then Director Kuhn. Oh, Director Stone's fine. Director Kuhn, please.
Yeah, I just have a comment. If there is a request to draw down money from a reserve fund, could we have the figures of the reserve funds attached to that so we know how much is in the reserves and how much is being drawn down from that? So we don't have to go ourselves and check out how much is left and how much is being used out of that. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Did I see Director Martman?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make sure on the, appears to be just a typo under problem opportunity. Is this intended to say this project is the regional recreation referendum and just drop the word and? Or is there something missing?
So it's just that it was tied to the regional recreation referendum, and two were tied together. So sorry about that. I thanked Director Martman for noting the typo earlier the day. So the two projects, they just go hand in hand, and it was a combination of two separate supplementals into one.
So just follow up. So what should it actually read then?
That the project is tied to the regional recreation referendum. So
Okay.
the project of the of doing this facility use analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Salmon, follow up.
Yeah, follow up. Thank you. So on the referendum itself, so it'll be held in 2022 with the usual regular elections. And then there'll be some public engagement to do with that in 2021. Is that, am I on the right track with that? You're still there?
That is my understanding. I'm looking to see if Mr. Elzinga is online, as he is the expert. I'm not seeing his face pop up. So, oh, there he is. Sorry to put you on the spot, Mr. Elzinga.
No, thank you, Ms. Aldera, and through the chair to the question. The intent is that the facility use analysis would come in the fall of 2021. Of course, we would be communicating to the board around that because we're certainly aware of COVID impacts on facility use. So that's the first step. Then we would be moving through public engagement early in 2022 through to referendum preparation for October of 2022, as the director has outlined. Thank you.
Okay, so follow up.
Certainly.
So it's $70,000 roughly just to add this referendum question to the regular municipal elections.
Ms. Soldera, do you have an answer to that one?
So that includes the public engagement that would lead up to the referendum.
So the engagement and the referendum cost would be $70,000, as you noted.
Right, in addition to the $49,000 2021 engagement costs. It looks like.
I think you're getting a nod there too. Yes.
Yes, so sorry, I was just looking to see if Mr. Elzinga was back online. His screen is a little frozen on my screen, and he, as I say, he is the expert. But I believe that the committee and the board received a report previously with respect to this item that discussed the fact that we would do various consultation processes over a 2-year period, and this would be the costs. And so at that meeting, the direction was given to staff to bring forward this supplemental request. So this is just finalizing that direction.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm just wondering if maybe for future, it's hard sometimes to remember the original discussion when there could be a link from this sort of budget summary page to the original reports or something like that, so we can refresh. That might be helpful for the future. I don't know if that's a lot of work to do or what.
Thank you for that, Director Salmon. I think I saw Director Smith.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, will the consultant for use analysis also include the 2011 data that was collected and then the report from 2017 that was also data collected? Will that be brought into this analysis? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Is Mr. Elzinga still with us? I don't see him popping up. Anyone else like to take this? Perhaps upon his return, he will answer that for you, Director Smith, if that's appropriate.
I think he's logged out and back in, so we may have to ask the question again.
Yeah, so if he does return, we'll go back to your question, Director Smith, if time permits. There he is. Did you happen to hear the question, Mr. Elzinga?
I did, if you can hear me, and my apologies to the committee for the connection issues. So through to Director Smith, yes, the intent is that the two facility use analysis would be combined in the recommendation that goes forward to referendum in October. So we would be using the 2011 facility use analysis as well as, or sorry, the most recent facility use analysis, as well as the one that's proposed for 2021.
Follow up, Director Smith.
Is there some reason that you wouldn't be using the analysis from 2011?
The 2011 facility use analysis has some concerns because two-tiered admission fees for the Cowichan Aquatic Center were in play at that time, and that could be potentially impacting upon those numbers. We could certainly bring that forward again to the board for consideration.
With an asterisk stating that the two-tier was in place at that time, maybe something to consider.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'll come back to, oh, sorry.
The two-tier was only for the aquatic center. Thank you. I know, I can see you, Aaron. Thanks.
I have Director Marsh and then Director Stone.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Elzinga. I imagine your department will be crafting the wording of the referendum. So I'm hoping that it wouldn't be complicated by explaining the two-tier before and because I think for referendums, it's most important that it's short and sweet, clear, but short and sweet. So what's your thoughts about that?
Through the chair to Director Marsh, I would certainly be leaning on the expertise of the Legislative Services Division, Finance Division, and others, communications as well, as we move forward, not only with the crafting of the referendum question, but public engagement that leads up to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Director Stone, then Director Sebring.
I just wanted to remind that this isn't the time to be discussing these things other than the budget impacts. Once we get into the actual practicalities of the usage analysis and stuff, when we're actually discussing the items, then, because if we get into this on every budget item, it's going to be an extremely long meeting.
Thank you for that, Director Stone. Procedurally, we'll try to stick to the budget portion. Director Sebring.
And taking into account what Director Stone said, I'm going to be very brief. For somebody to say that this only affects the aquatic center, from our perspective at North Cowichan, that's the biggest unit. And if we start including those 2011 numbers, we have a problem at North Cowichan side. I'm just saying that. So, but this is neither the time nor the place. We'll have the discussion later. Thank you.
And we will bring that forward in a future meeting for that discussion. I was remiss in not welcoming Alternate Director Justice, so I'll do that now. Welcome, Alternate Director Justice. My apologies. Are we finished on number 1 then? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries, and I acknowledge Director Nicholson has returned. We will come back to R1 when we're finished a couple of points here on R5. We have delayed R1. So I believe number 4 was pulled as well. And who pulled that one? Please remind me, Director Smith.
I'm just looking for a little more detail from staff on this. I feel that it's a good looking at regional active transportation was part of our strategic planning, and it's good to see that this is moving forward. I just am wondering if with all our, with a lot of the master plans for parks, if some of that information is already in the master plans for A, B, C, D, and E for that. And so I was just wondering how those are going to mix in with this in the requirements for this consultant.
Director Stone.
I was just getting on the speakers list. I just remind again, this is a budget discussion, so I have a budget question when my time comes. Thank you.
Okay, I'll leave you on the list. I'll go to Mr. Farquhar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the committee, certainly within our community parks master plans, and I understand with some of our member municipality plans as well, there are references and a higher level aspirations with respect to active transportation. The intention of undertaking an active transportation plan for the region would be to delve into it in greater detail to affirm opportunities for active transportation within our road networks, interconnectivity, and get it to a level where we are ideally at a position that as other levels of government and other programs come along which could provide funding, that we've got a level of detail and public support to be able to go after those funds and actually integrate the plan into establishing the network. So the master plans do make note, but they were at a very high level. This would be really delving into a better analysis of functionality within our road network of where active transportation routes could be established.
Okay, Director Stone.
Just following up on the meeting that we had with the province, there was discussion about some funding for active transportation. And I know there's, some contemplated infrastructure funding, but is there not still some grant funding available for the actual planning work?
Mr. Chair, yes, through the Provincial Active Transportation Program, they do annually allocate out funds both for projects for construction as well as sort of feasibility analysis design. The current round of funding has been allocated out. So as you'll note in the supplemental, we see this as being a 2-year initiative. So we certainly would want to look at the next round, ideally coming up for 2021, to be able to tap into that to help supplement the funding that otherwise we put towards this work. So absolutely, any chance we can get additional funds elsewhere to offset the cost of doing a transportation plan for active transportation, we would definitely want to go after that. But at this point in time, there's no funds currently available that we're aware of.
Follow up, Director Stone?
Yeah, I can follow up offline. We can always amend it, but I'm reading there's open applications. It looks like on the page I'm looking at right now, but we can follow up after.
Okay, thank you very much. I have Director Marsh, then Director Salmon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to appreciate, excuse me, in the staff report under recommendations that they pointed out that the first 5 of these 8 resolutions were really important. They were ranked as #1 importance. And I think it's really helpful when we're looking at that in a year that many people are feeling should be an austerity budget year. I think it's important to pay attention to that. So I really appreciate that you spelled that out very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Marsh. Director Salmon, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm just a little skeptical on the value. These plans tend to end up on the shelf with many others. So I'm just thinking in this year, when where constraints are more than usual, if I would prefer to let this one wait. So we do have the local plans, as Lynn said, and I actually just can't see myself supporting this one.
Fair enough. Any further speakers? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? I see Director Sebring opposed, Director Salmon opposed, Director Smith, and Director Wilson opposed. That motion does carry. Thank you. And I believe number 6 would be the next one that was pulled. And that was the Regional Parks Trail Master Plan, I believe. Who pulled that one? Director Wilson, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I agree that we need a review of the acquisition program. There's no two ways about that, because I've been looking very, very carefully into what's been going on in there since 2008. What I have a problem with, and as Director Stone has pointed out, this is a question of budgetary stuff, and $100,000 for consultants seems to be an awful lot. Now, I'm going back to when I was a so-called consultant, and I know what I charged. And the number of days that's involved here is excessive, to say the least. It works out to at least 100 days. And if you work that out, it's going to be something like about 4 or 5 months of 8-hour, 5-day weeks. So that's a pretty intensive thing. And I cannot support spending $100,000 on something which really is, this could easily be done, I think, in-house with maybe even a subcommittee. But I can't support spending $100,000 on this kind of thing.
Thank you very much. I have Director Kuhn, Director Marsh. Did I miss anyone? Director Morrison.
Yes, I am also against spending $100,000 on another study. We are spending a lot of money on these consultations, and I do believe we have a master plan. If we think we should adjust it, we can do that in-house. I don't think there's a need to hire somebody for $100,000 to tell us, well, maybe it would be better if we did this now. I am totally against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Marsh, then Director Morrison.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As the, I don't know, the part of the report that addresses this item specifically says under the problem opportunity that as we're, envisioning securing in perpetuity a variety of outdoor recreational opportunities and talking about livability, et cetera. But it goes on to speak about our 2020-22 strategic plan, and also that we want to consider the protection of sensitive ecosystems and significant environmental features and opportunities for all kinds of other things. I'm assuming, and maybe Mr. Farquhar, if you're still there, you could tell me, I'm assuming the consultant wouldn't be sitting at a desk. They would be going out and looking at the regional parks and checking out some of the sensitive ecosystems. Am I right?
Mr. Chair, through to Director Marsh, correct. This would be a full-scale review and update of a Regional Parks Trails Master Plan that currently is in place, understanding that through the board strategic plan that there's a bit of a shift interest in looking at expansion or a change to the priorities under the program. So similar to when the plan was done back in 2006, 2007 through consultants. The consultants led the process from start to finish, including doing assessments, including engaging with the public, community groups, interest groups, preparing the overall plan, all the level of public engagement, and also would be looking at, in this case, the interests, other opportunities to support the program through non-tax dollars by way of donations or other means that the board has indicated an interest in looking into. So this would also be delving into that as well. So The ability for staff, your current staff resources within the Parks and Trails Division would not be able to undertake an initiative of this scale based on the requirements that would be laid out in doing.
Right. And so I'd just like to, I acknowledge what Director Wilson said. I wasn't, I guess, considered a consultant. I was a facilitator, and that's been almost 10 years, and I was paid $1,000 a day. So I imagine if I was to go back to that, it would be a little bit more than that 10 years later. And so, I just have every confidence that this has been carefully looked at, because the board has made it really, really clear that they wanted to have this 0% increase. And I have, from the very first day I've sat at this table, which is probably 8 years ago, heard that staff are at capacity. So how we could find, as wasn't quite how Mr. Farquhar worded it, but I just don't see that we have the staff that could take 4 to 5 months to do this. So I do not believe this is for a plan that's going to sit on a shelf. This is for an active plan to tie together all of our parks. And, I don't think any of us who have spent any time outdoors during this current pandemic can deny that parks have never, I don't think, been used as much as they are now. And it's my belief that once people get the bug in their blood, even when the pandemic's done, they're going to still be out there. And that makes for savings in tax dollars, albeit from other levels of government. But as a few people are fond of saying, there's only one taxpayer. So I do support this. I'm really grateful for the work staff's put into it. And I will be voting in favor.
Thank you, Director Marsh. I have Director Morrison, Steve Spring, then Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to maybe ask two things. First one being process. I don't believe this item has been moved, and though we voted on the other two, I didn't hear them being moved or seconded either. I would love to be wrong, but I think we're supposed to move and second each item before we address them. So if that could be corrected, I'd be more than willing to move this item if that would be the proper procedural thing to do. And if there's a second,
procedurally, if you're going to move it,
I'll move
let's
it
have
if
a
I can
seconder.
speak to it.
Okay, and it's moved and seconded. Carry on, Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I struggle in that we've had a lot of discussion about the Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund. I attended a number of the meetings in 07 and 08 when they were originally held to establish the plan and pass the referendum numbers. It was a monumental effort, as I'm sure Mr. Farquhar and other people that participated in it would agree. And there has been significant discussion around this table about the funding of that particular function. And I believe that it was this board that said that that needed a redo and a relook. So I'm struggling with the notion that we sent staff away to put together something that would give us an idea what it would cost to do the redo. And they go away and do it, and then they come back and we say, well, hang on, maybe this isn't something that we want to do. I'm really interested in a review of the Regional Parkland Acquisition Fund because it was a different scope that was established then. The list of targeted properties were really more of a recreational nature than they were of a environmental and environmental asset perspective. So, I would support this, but I certainly understand the rationale of maybe this isn't the year to proceed. And I think referring it to the 2022 budget would be more than appropriate, but I won't make that motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Hopefully we did move and second the previous two. I'm I'm not sure if we did or not. We'll look back at the video later. I have Director Sebring, Director Kuhn, Director Nicholson, and Director Salmon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. $100,000 is a lot of money for a consultant. Let me start there, and I don't disagree with the points made by the directors Kuhn and Wilson. Equally, I'm interested in the scope of this review, because what are we reviewing in terms of the Parkland Acquisition Fund? You know, I have long made the case, and some of you have heard me make this case going back several years, that this function that we have is creating, you know, we're acquiring parkland over here. When we do that, we create a bunch of cost drivers over here in terms of the maintenance and the work involved in maintaining and operating the parks that we acquire with the Parkland Acquisition Fund. Stony Hill is the best example. I mean, you know, that thing has been so popular that now, you know, I don't know where that is, and I'm not necessarily looking for an update, but, you know, last year there was talk about, oh my God, now we got to do a sustainability piece for Stony Hill because people are off the trails and we're doing environmental damage to the park. So the scope of this study that we're being asked to approve here, would that include the notion of saying, you know, the Parkland Acquisition Fund should be about more than just acquiring parkland? It should also look at the ramifications of doing that in terms of some of the cost drivers over on the other side. And I don't know whether we need, I'm not even sure whether we can do it, whether we could do a direction to staff to say this fund is not just to be used for acquisition, but, you know, 70% for acquisition and 30% for the resulting costs. I don't know how that works, because this fund was approved in a referendum. Would we have to go back to referendum to change the terms of reference of this function? I don't know that, but that's the kind of information that I'd like to see come out of this review. Is that part of the scope of what we're asking the consultant to look at for the $100,000? And if not, why not?
Mr. Chair, that would certainly be inclusive as part of the overall review, updated the plan and direction. Yes, that would be included.
Awesome to hear. Thank you. Then I'll be supporting this.
Allocating some funds to maintenance, that would probably require going back to referendum, as it was quite specific on the purchase within that original implication. So
well,
that would require.
That's what I'd like to see coming out of the report. And I see, and I see our CAO is sitting at the dock of the bay. Ryan, did you have something to respond to my little rant? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, actually, I'm sitting, that is the dock of one of our regional parks, Butte Island, behind me. I think I'll let the conversation unfold, but I have a suggestion that might help us work through this, because I think what we're getting caught up in is the project. And you really need to outline the scope before you start applying a cost to it. And so I'll let the committee continue to have their conversation, but there may be another option that you might want to consider moving forward. So I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much. I'll keep looking for that doc when I've exhausted my speakers list. I have Director Kuhn, Nicholson, Salmon, Wilson, and Marsh. Director Kuhn.
Yes, I would like to get back to what Director Marsh said earlier, and I agree with that, and that is this should be an austerity budget. To spend $100,000 on a study does not go with an austerity budget. I'm sorry, this, I could see a possibility of what Director Morrison indicated, maybe to push it over into next year. I would support that, but I'm not willing to support that for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder, directors, we are being recorded, so your body language can be seen. We don't always agree, but let's agree to disagree. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I think this is a very important topic, and I think that some people have thought that staff would be able to do this work. I don't think they have either the capacity or probably the skill set when you're talking about the ecological benefits of protecting parkland. And so I think that we do need to do a review with qualified people that can provide that kind of advice. I also think that we have a community asset out there. Many people in the community are very engaged in parks and actually have a lot of the qualifications that you might be looking for. And I, based on our conversation about what the scope of this is, I think we would benefit from setting up a committee to help us develop some terms of reference for this review and to start to have a community conversation, because it's important to bring the community along on this topic because they are very interested in it. And I think that this would probably be better if it was phased over 2 years. So to try and do at less cost this year, to try and set up a commission or a committee or whatever the right term is for this, a standing committee, I guess, to do that, to help with the work and to get the framework figured out, and then next year go ahead with the review. I suspect that there's quite a bit of technical information that we don't have about our parks and I know that we haven't done an ecological inventory, for example, and I think that kind of work is going to be important as we move forward. But ultimately, from my perspective, the most important thing right now is to be continuing to put money in the bank. So when opportunities to purchase properties arise that we know have significant ecological value, and we need to be able in a position to purchase those. So, and I think there's enough community knowledge about which those properties are right now, because we don't really have a large number of parks as it is. So I guess I would be interested in sort of a phased approach with community involvement.
Thank you very much, Director Nicholson. I have Director Salmon, Wilson, Marsh, and Smith. Director Salmon, please.
Yeah, thank you. I prefer to wait till 2022 for a couple of reasons. It's almost like I'd rather put 100,000 into actual acquisition if we were going to do that rather than a study. I think sometimes we fall into this sort of spell of a study that just having it done will make it happen, whereas of course it all depends on the availability of the actual land and whether we can make a deal. So I think in this year, given that our existing master plan actually is supposed to run to the end of 2022, would be I'd much prefer to defer starting that and maybe get a bit more clarity on the scope of what we're trying to do in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm glad this has brought forward this discussion because it is an important one. I think one of the things that I've got to pick up on is that, and I'm not picking on you, Director Marsh, but you said that this board has made it clear that they want a 0% mandate increase here. This is not going to be helping that in any other way. And I'd like to know whether some of the phrases which are used in this report here for environmental protection, conservation, etc. Under the LGA, I've looked and I can't see anywhere in the LGA where there's a mandate for local government such as ours to protect ecosystems or something like that. That is a provincial area, and I don't see anywhere else that it's going in. One of the most important parts that has to be looked at is it's all very well, and I'm glad that Director Sebring brought this up, was the cost of maintaining the land once we've got it. Every report that has come forward has said basically, we're going to buy this land, or we'd like to buy this land, it's going to cost $1 million. Nowhere in those reports does it say, but it's going to cost us $200,000 a year to maintain, develop, or improve this. And this is something that I would like to see in any report that comes forward regarding acquisition. There should be a section in there which includes a detailed analysis of the possible costs involved in taking that on. You buy a car, it's going to cost you. you buy a house, it's going to cost you as it comes on. We don't see those detailed analyses of where and how much it's going to cost as we go forward. And that's something I would like to see involved. One of the things that was touched on was that all this was agreed by referendum, and any changes would have to go back to a referendum. And in this particular case, I'm going to say thank you very much to the finance department, because I've had some discussions with them during the week. They're very, very good at explaining the intricacies of what goes on as far as financing is concerned, and I have a much better picture. Yes, this would have any changes to the acquisition would have to go back to a referendum. Certainly not the much maligned AAP, that's for sure. So we can't change the acquisition without going to a very costly thing. But what we can do is make sure that any acquisition report that comes forward contains a section which says, if we do this, this is what it will cost you for the next 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Wilson. I have Director Marsh, Director Smith, and Director Staples.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I believe what I said was, I acknowledge that a lot of people on the board wanted this to be on an austerity budget. So Director Kuhn, if you thought I was saying that I agreed with that, that's not what I was saying. The part of the report, I don't know what you call it, the second part, the part that comes out of the main page, speaks about the need for protection and preservation of sensitive ecosystems. And someone sent me an article this morning written in The Guardian that I haven't had a chance to read. But basically, this will give you an idea. Top scientists warn of ghastly future of mass extinction and climate disruption. And I think that we've, for, well, as long as I've been a counselor or a director, but even longer, we've known that we were on a course that should we continue it, and I'm talking about the collective worldwide we, because I think 10 years ago, the CVRD was doing some really great things in terms of purchasing land. But it seems to me, given the acceleration of the changes we've been warned were coming for quite some time, for instance, the entire west coast of the United States burning most of the summer, and the number of floods. I think someone told me, and I didn't check it out, I believed them, that, and it was before last night's storm, that in a period of about 8 days, we had 7 storms or something like that in this general region. So,
Mr. Chair, point of order, are we talking about budget here, or are we talking about the environment?
Thank you, Director Wilson. Continue, Director Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I feel that, if people want to put it off, that's could be the way they go. I would prefer to get started, especially if, as has been said, it's going to take 4 to 5 months. We are actually so fortunate here to have so much land, and much of it is fee simple land. And so I think that given we've run down the reserves pretty low in this function, and we agreed as part of our strategic plan, we wanted to have a review of it. I would hate to miss the chance to do purchases that would help us do our part and adapt, because I think mitigation of climate change, those days are over now. We are facing it, and it's going to continue to get worse. And the decisions we make today will affect our great grandchildren on how bad it's going to be, including potentially leading to extinction. So I support doing this. And I, as you know, would support the full acquisition, which I understand is not likely to happen under this board. But I'll end with saying that a statistical survey done by the Centre for Policy Alternatives in Canada, the results of that were that 71% of Canadians want every level of government, that includes local, to do everything they can, no matter what it costs, basically, to preserve our ecosystems and to do our part in adapting to climate change. So you can read that in a book called A Good War. And it's...
Director Marsh, I hate to cut you off, but I do have an extensive speakers list.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you for your tolerance.
I know that we do, that you do support the function, and we appreciate your input. Director Smith, Staples, Yanni DiNardo, and Salmon.
Thank you. I also have concerns with the development costs involved in purchasing land, that this function definitely doesn't take that into consideration. It's very important. I mean, we're sitting here looking at our CAO's background picture, which is Butte Island and a wharf. And that comes with conditional assessments and wondering what the replacement cost of that is. So I think that we need to also take into consideration development costs, whether trails will be put into the property along with the purchase price. I also have concerns that the province of BC should be looking at tracts of land and conservancy organizations that purchase land. So I'm a little concerned about us heading off into a direction that is not something we're mandated as a local government. I believe that we need to pursue this, looking into it, but 100,000 out of operating reserves at this time is 100,000 that's not available for the purchase of land. I will not be supporting this project at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Smith. I have Director Staples next.
Yeah, thank you. I think that we always have to remember the cost of when we don't do things as well. Every time this topic comes up at our board, anything related to parks, we sort of seem to meander away from the actual motion that's on the floor and what we're actually discussing into the, whether or not we value the importance of parks. And since everyone's been going there, I'm going to step in at this time and go there as well. Because the public has been over and over again in surveys that we've done at the city and surveys that the regional district has done, in the people who have come to the budget meetings. One of the things that people talk about, particularly more now than ever during COVID, is the importance of parks, the importance of outdoor space that's accessible to everyone, the importance of protecting those spaces. And as I've heard a million times at every conference I've ever gone to, from local politicians, from people, we can say that we need the province to do this, but this is the community that we live in, and we need to decide what's important to us. And our community has asked us over and over again to value parks, to value outdoor spaces, to value our ecosystem, and to protect it. And so I'm not saying that this study I liked Director Nicholson's idea of phasing something in. I think that would be something at this time that would be appropriate. But I think the ongoing conversation about not supporting and protecting space in our region is not a direction that we should go as a board. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Staples. Perhaps we have too lenient of a chair to allow that sort of discussion to continue. But no, in all fairness, I think all points of view are relative. But if we can stick to the budget portion that we're discussing today, I'd appreciate that. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to say that the scope of this, I am in favor of the Parkland acquisition, but we did say that we wanted a review. I'm just concerned about the scope of this review. I'm all in favor of it. And I kind of between Director Sebring and Director Nicholson, the maintenance, the long-term costs, like they're all great, but what will it cost us later? It should be in the scope. Like it needs to be the maintenance, the whole package. Is this another staff member? Is this, I believe that we need to look at this in likely even a phased, project too. So part of it this year and part of it next year, and not really rushing it and just having, a consultant's paper. We need to really look at this and the long-term costs as well.
I think our CAO would like to chime in on this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've been listening to the conversation and directors are all making good points, and maybe just to help you along and to compile a bunch of the comments that were made, we can afford to spend some time developing the scope of this project before approving the budget. And I get the sense that there's differing expectations around the table with respect to what this review might entail. So for your consideration, you may want to consider having a select committee of the Regional Services Committee to come together, develop the scope so that staff can then go out and determine how best to deliver that. Whether we would do it in a hybrid model between staff and consultants or a consultant, but I think we've kind of put the cart before the horse and we're getting bogged down on that. So I would present that to the committee for consideration that we defer. It's coming from operating reserve, so you can amend the budget at a later date to accommodate the cost of doing this project moving forward.
Great, thank you for that insight. I have two more speakers, Director Salmon and Director Wilson. Do you still wish to speak? Director Salmon?
Yeah, briefly, that helps. Thank you, Mr. Crothers. Well, I just had a specific, just circling back to what Director Wilson said. If we did this master plan and it came out with a new direction, new criteria for acquisition, does that mean we would need to get new public approval and another referendum?
Mr. Chair, I think I could respond to that. No, I don't believe so. I mean, the services for acquisition of parks, how you go about it, the priorities or the criteria that you use, I don't believe that we would require an amendment to the service to do that.
Okay, thank you.
But I think one of the questions, if I may, was if maintenance were to be added into that, would that require any input referendum-wise?
Yes, through the chair. The service is specific to acquisition. Maintenance is a separate issue, and I think those issues of incorporating maintenance costs into acquisition, one's acquisition, one's operating, but that can be included in your scope of your review as well to discuss.
Great, just so that we're clear. I have Director Wilson and then Director Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's some good discussion coming forward here, and I'd like to just reinforce the fact that I am not against parkland acquisition at all. I'm just looking at the way it's been administered over the last few years, and that's basically what I'm looking at is the cost, the budgetary cost of this, and that's why I brought up the ongoing maintenance, the improvements, and everything else that goes with it. I have to say about the budgetary meetings public meetings that we had, and I think Director Staples just said that there were some public attendees who came. There weren't that many. There was only one certainly, and I attended all four of them. And any opposition or anything that's coming forward in support of the parkland acquisition seems to be coming from one direction only, and I'm concerned about that. But however, let me reinforce: I am not opposed to acquisition. I am in favor of acquisition. What I am not in favor of is the way it's being spent. And that's why I want to be so careful on how much it's actually going to cost us to buy that and then maintain that as well.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Director Stone to close.
Yeah, just to summarize, there is in the materials when we established the referendum, it does say specifically 11 specific sites of interest having significant regional outdoor recreation and natural values for acquisition. So it was understood from my recollection and from the materials that I've collected that there is some contemplation of natural values or ecological values, if you will. That being said, I'm fully supportive of deferring the actual spend till either later this year. As Mr. Carruthers just said, we can amend the budget if we decide we need some funding as we get through this year. But deferring that item this year and doing, like he also suggested, a select committee where we can work with staff and members of the board to determine the scope of the review. And just the final comment is, Parkland acquisition, we have a function for. Parkland maintenance and operations, we already have a function for. It's just that when the reports come, it should tell us what those costs will be. Not that we have to change the function and draw it down to do the maintenance, but that we know that the other function is going to bump up as a result of a Parkland acquisition. So I would say that I think we're ready to call the question. Thank you.
We are, and it has been moved and seconded. I see Director Nicholson's hand come up, though.
Thanks. I just would like, I think we're heading in the right direction on the select committee, but I would like to make sure that we do get it going sooner rather than later, so that we actually get some substantive work done this year, so we are in a better position to do some work, to move on things next year. So I guess my question through to you, just to staff, is: do you have the capacity to get this off the ground right away?
I think that would be up to us to implement that select committee through Chair Stone and to get that process going as soon as possible, if I'm not mistaken. If you could correct me if I'm wrong, Chair Stone.
Right, as far as I can tell, I think that there's going to be some requiring of staff resourcing, but we can talk about that with staff. If we do need other resources, as Mr. Carruthers already explained, we can make that budget amendment if we want to allocate a small amount of funding out of those operational reserves this year. If we need some assistance in helping develop that scope, but I don't see that as a necessity at this moment.
As soon as possible, implementing that subcommittee. Yes, Mr. Carruthers.
So given that this is a corporate services meeting to discuss budget, I would suggest that you refer this matter, you can deal with this resolution in front of you, back to regional services, at which time you can have a conversation about the establishment of a select committee and how to go about that and what support staff can provide to get that committee established.
Thank you very much. One more time for hands. So we do have a motion on the floor. Do we need a referral motion, Director Morrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So perhaps staff can correct me if I'm wrong. The motion that we're putting, that's before us, is a placeholder to possibly do the work with funds that will come out of operating reserve. So if we approve this resolution, all of those things can take place and we don't have to spend a penny of money or a penny until the scope in terms of reference or whatever select committee is decided upon, if this resolution moves forward and is adopted as is. Is that a correct assessment of the outcome of passing this resolution? Is there a staff person could answer that?
I will refer to Ms. Soldera to answer that.
My understanding based on the discussion was that we would defer allocating funds towards this project until we had set up the select committee and established clearer terms of reference. So you could still do it, but it would require a budget amendment at that time.
Okay, that clarifies. think I saw Director Marsh, please.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but I got bumped off for about 5 minutes, so I'd really like to just hear the motion before you call the vote. Thank you.
Ms. Legault, would you like to read that for
Sure.
us, please?
The motion was that that it be recommended to the board that the supplemental request for Function 285 Regional Parkland Acquisition Master Plan Review be approved.
Okay, are we ready for the question? All those in favor? Those opposed? See Director Sebring, Kuhn, Wilson, Smith, Yanni DiNardo, Salmon, and anyone else? Can you leave your hands up again, those opposed? Sebring, Kuhn, Smith, Yanni DiNardo, Salmon, Wilson. Ms. Legault?
That's 6 opposed, so the motion carries.
Can I just?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Director Stone.
I just want to say this has no effect on requisition. And again, as staff said, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? So the motion's approved, it's in the budget, but we've already kind of informally agreed to strike a select committee to discuss the scope. And as we get through that, we can report back to the board with direction. So it really has no force and effect on this year's budget, but if we need it, it's there. Thank you.
Right. No, thanks for that clarification. I don't know about you, but I think I need to stretch. If you're willing for a 10-minute recess, while we can get a drink or a coffee or whatever we need, we'll do a 10-minute recess. How much time do I have?
Camera's live.
Welcome back, directors. Hope we've all coffeed up and ready to go again. With your indulgence, we will return to R1. Director Nicholson had asked that that be delayed until her attendance. And if we could, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R1 is a report from the Finance Division on the Parks and Trails 2021 draft budgets referred from December 2nd Special Electoral Area Services Committee meetings. And this is for the community parks budgets for Area E, G, and H. And I believe each of the directors have something that they'd like to propose for those budgets, so perhaps we could address them separately.
Okay, who would wish to start? Let's start with Director Nicholson, as she had asked for this to be delayed. Director Nicholson, please.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend to the board that draft 2021 budget for Function 235 Area E Community Parks be amended by number 1, increasing the minor capital by $10,000, increasing invasive species management by $5,000, and increasing requisition by $15,000. And I'll speak to it if I have a seconder.
That has been moved and seconded if you wish to speak to it.
So I met with my Parks Commission last Thursday night, and the recommendation that I'm making is based on their concerns about a couple of projects that need to be done, shouldn't be delayed out at Glenora Trailhead Park, and keeping on top of invasive species management in our parks, which is becoming an increasing problem.
Great, thank you very much. Any further discussion on that? Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for Director Nicholson. I have no problem with supporting this at all, which I will do. Just a question. Does it come out of your budget? It doesn't impact the overall budget, just as a point of clarification?
Ms. Soldera, that would come from the local community parks function, would it not?
Absolutely. So the requisition percentage increase will actually reflect the $15,000 increase the total number, but only those participants in the service would pay for the service. So yes, this would come all from the residents of Electra.
And we all know, Director Wilson, that you do support parks. Thank you very much. So can I call the question on this one? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Moving on to number 2. Was there an amendment on this one as well?
I believe Director Smith has something.
I missed your hand, Director Smith. I apologize. I see you there now. Please.
Thank you. That it be recommended to the board that the draft 2021 budget function 237 Area G Community Parks be amended by increasing minor capital by 15,000, increasing major capital land improvement by 21,000, increasing transfer from capital reserves by 21,000, increased transfers from operating reserves by 15,000. And I'll speak to that if I have a seconder.
Been moved and seconded. Please carry on.
Thank you very much. We have had some deterioration in our trails over time, and I really appreciate the assistance by Mr. Farquhar and his department for giving me the costs that would assist with doing a type 2 trail on the southeast forest loop in Centennial Park. One of the advantages of upgrading that trail will be a active transportation connection to from sort of the subdivision over to the newly opened Saltaire Canco supermarket. So that's an excellent upgrade that we will be looking forward to. And with the mud that has transpired in Princess Di Park over the years, it's now reached an area of approximately 5 to 6 inches. So this will definitely work to improve those areas, and I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to also the Parks Commission did approve the Centennial Park lower ball court cracks, repairs, and sealing under minor capital. The tennis courts under minor capital to be the surfaces for cracks and mitigation work, and the $5,000 for the removal of the tennis practice court as a risk assessment has been done on the condition of the court there at this time. I'd like to thank the CVRD staff and Parks and Trails for assisting to bring forward these projects at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And I'm going to try to turn to you, Director Martman, and see if your connectivity issues are still ongoing. You had something in your area as well?
Yes, if you can hear me, item R13, I'd like to have that recommend that be deferred to the January special corporation meeting. The other to Parks Advisory Commission.
So I think we got the gist of that. You would like to defer that to the January 25th special corporate services meeting. Do I need a seconder on that one? Moved and seconded.
Mr. Chair, I just want to point out, in case no one else knows, that Director Martman had put this in the chat. So we can remember that that's something to look for if someone is having connectivity or speaking problems, that we can always put it in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, I did note that, but I wanted to see if his connectivity had resolved itself. It doesn't seem to, but I think we've got the gist of it, Director Martman. Moved, seconded, ready for the question. All Is that a question, Director Morrison? Okay, all in favor, sorry. Opposed, if any? Thank you very much. I believe that concludes R1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to item R6, which is a verbal report from the Finance Division on the budget public engagement, and that is for information.
Okay. Ms. Soldera, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you very much. As most of you are aware, we held 4 virtual public meetings on the budget, and I really appreciate everyone's attendance at those. It was nice to see so many people from the committee, from the board showing up. And as I believe was alluded to previously, we did not have great turnout, but we did have people show up at every single one. So that was better, at least, than when we did them in person, where we had 2 with no participants. So we did have a total of 16 people participate in those virtual budget public meetings. We had some good question and discussion at our very first meeting, which made me all excited, and then limited discussion at the other meetings. But as I say, that was there. The meetings were all recorded, and my understanding from communications is that they will be posted to our website for people to access whenever they feel like it in the future. And I will be following up with a written report to the committee for at the January 25th meeting, which will include feedback from our Place Speak item, and people are welcome to go on and look at that feedback now. We have had 59 surveys filled out and 47 discussion threads. And so I will include a formal written report with any feedback from the public meetings, as well as from the Place Speak at the January 25th meeting. But just wanted to let you know what happened at the virtual budget public meetings, which ended last night.
Great. I'd like to just thank you and staff who were involved in that process. I know it's a difficult time to try to get information out to the public, and we tried our best virtually. I do have a speakers list. I have Director Stone, Wilson, and Yanni DiNardo.
Just a little bit of feedback from our community that it was scheduled on the same night and time as our committee of the whole meeting. So it was difficult for Ladysmith folks to participate in both. And I know there's some interest with our council, and they were unable to participate due to performing their council duties or to at least attend. So can you just, when those are posted, it would be appreciated if we could get an email just to let us know when they're up, and then we can share those with our community members. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a word of congratulations to Ms. Soldera. Very concise presentation, very professional and very clear. So thank you very much for that, Talitha. Great job.
Would that mean that your area had the most participation, Director Wilson?
We did actually, yeah.
Thank you. I have Director Yanni DiNardo, then Director Marsh.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo my fellow directors and thank also Mr. Schumacher that did a great job as a host, and also Ms. Soldera, and also the people that did actually get on and speak were quite impressed, and they were actually really surprised that each and every one of them got to, be spoken to. And, it worked out that way really well because we had small groups. We actually spoke to each person and asked if they had questions. And I think that was very successful. So I'd like to thank the staff and, of course, everyone who attended as well.
Thank you very much. Director Marsh and then Director Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just further to what Chair Stone said, there was also some conflict with some North Cowichan things, and I'm just wondering if the corporate services legislative staff can kind of communicate with everyone at these busy times so that those of us who are on the board can come to the board things. I don't know if that's too much to ask, but it's just a suggestion. Thank you.
I think a number of us did have conflicts with our council and municipal obligations as well. I couldn't attend the Ladysmith one for Lake Cowichan Council obligations, but I tried to attend as many as I could and thankfully got to attend a few of them. Director Smith, you're next.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the staff for arranging having 4 different meetings at 4 different times that gave an opportunity for people, if they were unable to attend the one that was for their area, they also had an opportunity to still attend a meeting. It was definitely, the presentations are really delightful, and I really would like to thank the staff and Mr. Schumacher for hosting it. It's a little hard to look at some of the numbers of the attendees and hoping the number goes up, but I think that having them posted to the website will definitely improve the opportunity for our communities to actually look at them and take their time going through those presentations as a video. Thank you very much for all the work and effort that went into all those 4 meetings.
Thank you very much. Director Staples?
Yeah, just to echo the thanks to staff, and the meetings were facilitated extremely well. And I think that of the sort of things that we're learning through the types of format that we're stuck with right now, I feel that exploring that type of format for delivery of budget meetings would be something that we should consider in the future. Because I think that while there weren't a lot of attendees, I think it is at least, rather than having them all in person, to have some online, I think would be something that we should just carry forward. I think that helps some people with their ability to attend. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone further? Again, Ms. Soldera, thanks to you and every other staff member that was involved in those presentations. And I encourage people to, once the videos are up, go up and see what the impacts of these budget discussions will be on your particular area. Moving on, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess we're on to question period, and checking my email, I see no submissions. So we would be looking for a motion to close the meeting to the public in accordance with the Community Charter, Section 91C.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Now we will leave this meeting and go to the separate closed, I believe.
That's correct. We'll end this meeting and start a separate meeting.